Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian. I am here today at the Rock Island Auction Company, taking a look at some of the guns they're going to be selling in their April of 2016 premiere auction. And this one is like the coolest rifle here, or at least the weirdest. This is a very early, mid-1930s Walther developmental semi-auto rifle. It's largely made out of stamped steel, and it uses this really fairly obscure, uncommon annular gas piston wrapped around the barrel, rotating bolt. It's actually got a fixed magazine that looks like it's detachable, but you have to actually disassemble the rifle to take it out. Very, very cool. There's not a whole lot that we know about this particular rifle. It was designated the A115 by Walther, and from what I read, they made at least 3 different versions, although I can't find any information on the other versions. This one is serial number 3, so it's possible that the documentation just means they made at least 3 of the rifles. And this particular one was actually tested by Aberdeen Proving Ground in 1955, after the war. It was captured somewhere, not sure where, and Aberdeen Proving Ground examined it. It then came into private hands at some point, and now here it is at the auction house. So it is a rotating bolt, gas-operated rifle. So in general, German rifle development was kind of held back by an insistence on not drilling gas ports in barrels. The German Ordnance Department really thought that that would cause significant problems to barrel life and rifling and accuracy, concerns which had some validity at that point when people didn't really know, but today we really know that a gas port in a barrel doesn't have any significant problems associated with it. However, most of the German rifle production focused on systems that didn't require a gas port, things like gas trap or annular gas systems like this, or recoil-operated rifles. Now, this one is actually a bit of an exception in that it does have gas ports in the barrel. Although it uses this annular gas system that it uses is very similar, in some ways it's basically the same system, as the later Gewehr 41 that Walther designed. However, the G41 didn't have a gas port, this one does. Kind of interesting that they sort of went backwards there. At any rate, it's a fascinating rifle to take a look into. It was developed by a guy named Carl August Browning, and that's not the American style of Browning, that's B-R-A umlaut N-I-N-G. And he had actually worked for the Dutch Ordnance, or a Dutch factory, as well as FN before he moved to the Walther Company. Put this together, I don't know exactly when these were developed, but they were tested up until about 1938. At that point, most of the German self-loading rifle experimentation was discontinued in favor of emphasizing production of the standard K98K Mausers. And the self-loading rifles wouldn't really come back until 1940, when they decided that maybe the war was going to kind of need a semi-automatic rifle. And so they put things back into development. This definitely was an influence on the Walther G41. You'll see that when we take it apart. Very clear signs of similarities with the gas system. So anyway, without further ado, why don't we pull this thing apart? I'll show you how it works and how it disassembles. All right, this is the fun part, taking it apart. Let's go ahead and start at the muzzle. We have here front sight blade, bayonet, and we have a muzzle ring. All right, I'm going to take this blade and lift it up. There's a little hole that I can lift it with a punch, and then unscrew this muzzle nut. All right, so we've got this off. Next step is we want to pull this front assembly off the barrel. It is dovetailed right here. So there are 2 tabs on the front of this sheet metal cover that lock into these 2 notches to hold it in place. I should point out this simply acts to limit forward travel of the gas piston. So the gas piston doesn't go any further forward than right here. Other than that, this piece is just on there to hold the bayonet and the front sight. Next up, we need to remove this whole front half of the sheet metal of the rifle. That is held in place by this kind of interesting screw lug right here. So this guy rotates, and when it rotates, it runs up and down. It's got a very coarse thread in it. So I want to rotate it 90 degrees all the way open, and then I can slide off the front half of the receiver. So now we have that piece off. Reassemble everything like that up on top. And now you can see our gas piston. It's this big piece right here, runs from here all the way back, and it hits on this piece, which is our bolt carrier. So that is how the rifle operates. We have two gas ports right up here. They push gas out into the front of this system. That is blocked right here, and so we have a gas chamber between this wall inside of here and the front of the gas piston. The gas is at high pressure in there, so it pushes all of this backwards. Here's a bit of a closer view. There's one of the gas ports on the bottom, and there's the other gas port on the top. The front of the gas piston is smooth and has a nice heavy ring to get a gas seal. The back is actually crimped in like this so that it fits snugly on the barrel. Okay, we need to take the upper assembly off of the rear receiver. However, first we have to take the magazine out. And in order to take the magazine out, we have to take the trigger assembly out. So the trigger assembly has a tab here at the front, which holds the magazine in place. And then it has that little pin punch spot in the back. The intention is probably that you would use the nose of a cartridge to do that. I'm going to use a pin punch. All I have to do is punch that down, and I can lift the trigger assembly up and right out of the rifle. Pretty simple here. This is our safety lever. When I rotate it back, this lifts up, which locks the bolt in place, and it safes the hammer. So when this is back, I can't lift up because of this bar. When I rotate it into the fire position, now the bar has receded behind this, and the hammer will go up. In fact, the hammer will go all the way forward because there's nothing there to stop it. There we go. Snap it back into place. We'll leave this on safe. So that's our removable trigger pack. You know, this whole rifle, despite the fact that it's a prototype, it's actually a pretty slick and effective, well, it's an efficient design. It's actually pretty easy to take apart, given the complexity of the action. Now we can take our magazine out. This also locks on over the top of this front tab. We've already got it out of the way, so we'll just pull the magazine. There we go. Magazine slides right out. It is interesting to note that this is an 8mm Mauser, but it's actually a single stack or a single feed magazine. So this holds 10 rounds, and it's a staggered double stack magazine, but at the top, the rounds come into a single feed position. So there's only one potential position for a cartridge to be in to load. And that's actually simpler for firearms design. When you have 2 rounds at the top, you alternate between a feed like this and a feed like that, which means the bolt needs to be able to reliably feed a cartridge from either side. With a system like this, it's easier. There's only one position that you need to worry about. The downside is that magazines like this tend to be more difficult to load because it takes more pressure. There's a lot of upward pressure trying to force the rounds into a single column. All right, now that we have all of the other pieces out, now we can take the bolt and barrel assembly out of the rear receiver. We do that by making sure that our locking plug here at the front is all the way down, and then this slides right out. Let's take a look at the stock first. There's not a whole lot going on here. However, we do have a captive recoil spring inside the buttstock of the rifle. So this arm acts as the recoil spring because it's connected back in. It's just a connecting rod. That's a pretty stiff spring, so I'm not going to push on it. This is very similar to, for example, an FNFAL rifle. And then we have our assembly plug at the front here. So you can see when this goes up, you have this nice big solid round plug that locks all of the pieces together. That plug, well, I'll show you in a minute. We have our magazine well, no magazine release because it is a fixed in-place magazine. And then these stamped impressed ribs are what guide the barrel assembly into the rifle. So this rear receiver is all stamped sheet metal components with some stuff welded and brazed together. The only markings on the gun are here on the receiver. We have Waffenfabrik Zella-Melles, Walther, that's the location of the Walther factory, and serial number 3. And that's it for markings. All right, we almost have this completely disassembled now. We have the bolt and barrel assembly, and this is just a top cover to, to keep everything closed up and out of the elements. It does also have little bent tabs on it that are our stripper clip guide for reloading. To take this off, we just lift it up, and then this slides off the front of the barrel. So a quick overview of how exactly this rifle cycles. This acts as the contact point for the gas piston, and these two oval cutouts, and you'll notice they're reinforced with a pair of little stampings here, those sit over the block in the barrel that causes it to rotate. Right there, goes in. So when this cover moves back and forth, it's actually causing the bolt to rotate, to lock and unlock, and then to move back and forth. Now we have the barrel extension and bolt. This is a rotating bolt. So you can see here that we have this camming piece, and when it goes forward and back, it rotates the bolt to lock it and unlock it. That central pivot there is actually the firing pin. So that's how this works. And in order to take it out, all I have to do is simply pull it out the back of the barrel extension. We've got a number of lugs there on the front, kind of an unusual configuration. The barrel extension here is basically just a set of guide rods. We've got the guide here to run into the receiver and hold it in place. And then we've got a pair of plates or surfaces here that the bolt sits on. And then you can see right up in here, we've got the locking lug recesses machined out. So the bolt locks into this, the barrel is threaded into it. This round hole is what a disassembly plug in the lower or the rear receiver locks into. So this assembly plug actually goes through this hole in the sheet metal front half of the receiver and then into this hole in the barrel extension, and that's what locks all three pieces together securely. All right, and lastly, I can take apart the bolt a little bit further. I can pull the firing pin over here. The firing pin comes out. Then our camming block comes out. We also have this locking piece that comes out. So there are all the bolt components. And there you have one completely stripped Walther A115 rifle. We don't have any information about the actual testing, or at least I don't. So I suspect they had some of the same problems as the later G41s had. This type of annular gas piston tends to foul pretty badly. And it's also a fairly close tolerance. When you have a typical gas piston riding inside a gas tube, some carbon fouling in the system doesn't generally cause a lot of problems. This, however, has to remain running at pretty close tolerances on the barrel. You get much carbon on it and you'll slow down the gas piston to the point that it won't cycle. And if it wears too much, you get gas blow-by, and again, the piston doesn't get moving fast enough and it doesn't cycle. The rotating bolt seems to be a pretty good system. Apparently, the sheet metal wasn't as good as they had hoped. One thing I did notice is that the lockup between the front and the rear of the receiver is pretty wobbly. This locking plug system does prevent things from coming apart, but it really doesn't hold them tightly together. So because you just have this thin piece of metal that it's locking through, it doesn't take much for that metal to open up and then the pieces wobble. And when they do wobble, your sight, especially your rear sight, is moving fairly dramatically in relation to the barrel and the front sight, and that certainly was causing accuracy problems. Other than that, it's a really cool early developmental Walther semi-auto. This is the sort of thing you don't see very often. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. This is one of those rifles that you get a chance to see very, very rarely. I'm really happy we were able to look at it and that I was able to figure out how to take it apart so I could show you the internals. For some lucky person out there, this is going to go into your own hands. It is, of course, up for sale here at Rock Island at the end of April. And if you're interested in buying it yourself, take a look at the description text below. You'll find a link to Rock Island's catalog page on it. You can check out their pictures and description and provenance and all that sort of stuff and place a bid online or come down here to Rock Island in person to participate in the auction. Thanks for watching.